Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. This week, we're very excited to welcome Dave Darcy from MADTV, Motorcycle Adventure Dirtbike TV on YouTube. Dave's a really good mate of Darren Higginson, who appeared very kindly in Season 2, Episode 18, and he talked about the trip he did with Dave from London through to Sydney. Dave is a bit of an Aussie dirt bike legend. He's an ex-copper, now retired, having a lot of fun making films and riding dirt bikes all over the world. He's very widely travelled and he's got some great stories to tell us. Along with London to Sydney, he's done the Road of Bones in Siberia. He's been to northwestern India and loads of great riding in Australia and New Zealand. There's nearly 700 films on his YouTube channel. We're delighted he could join us to talk about himself, his bikes, his travels, and his good mates, Clubby and Nugget, classic Aussie nicknames. Right, let's get on with it.
Has anyone asked the most predictable question we can possibly ask in this situation yet?
Yeah, the normal one is how many subscribers, how many views. That's the normal one.
Far more predictable than that. We're speaking to someone on the other side of the world. What's the first thing we want to know? What time is it over there?
It's 5:30 in the freaking morning. That's what it is.
You're joking.
I got my pajamas.
I feel really bad now because I thought it was...
Pajamas.
I thought it was 12 hours different, so I thought it would be like a reasonable time for you as well.
It's funny, John Mitchinson, he'd probably know from Rally Road Products. Because we're good mates, and he rings me regularly at 5 p.m, I think, or 4:30, and it's 5 a.m. there, and he's driving to work.
Well done. Thank you for getting up.
Yes, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. That's above and beyond the call of duty, I would say.
I was going to be less polite and say, for crying out loud, can't we do this a little bit later? But I thought it probably suits with work or something.
Well, I just got it wrong. I just didn't even look at the time differences. I guess we should start with getting a bit of an introduction from you. So sort of tell us who you are, where you live, and tell us a little bit about Motorcycle Adventure Dirtbike TV.
Yeah, well, I'm a 62-year-old grandfather with two grandkids, a boy and a girl. And I've been riding bikes since I was about 14. Now, a strange thing was that my father he's retired now, was a psychiatrist. And about 2 hours drive north of Sydney, where I am now, he moved. He got a job on this very large hospital grounds, I don't know, about 3,000 acres. Adjoining that was, it was basically the central location. It couldn't have been a better location for adventure riding, because straight from there, I could literally, as I got more skilled, I could literally just keep expanding. And as a 14-year-old boy, one of my first big trips was on a Honda XL 100, and I literally drove from Morisset at that time to a place called Wiseman's Ferry, which is 180 k's away on the dirt, on an old convict trail made in the 1880s. Imagine as a young boy doing that. I mean, I saw it, I looked at it on a map, I took some petrol on my back, 5 litres, to actually get there and then to get back. The place, it's quite funny, we talk about what our fathers do and they generally neglect it. So psychiatry for me was neglected. Discovered pretty quickly that a bike would be useful for me. Although he probably didn't work that right through. If the bike would have fallen on me, they would have never found me. So I had this endless exploration, and that became part of my DNA. And it's really interesting. You've had Darren on the show, Darren Higginson. And when I brought Darren back from London to Sydney on the final day, I took him to where I lived. There's some kangaroos there, and I took him to kangaroos because I had 2 pet kangaroos. And I lived on these thousands of acres, and that kind of inspired me to ride. And I was basically a dirt rider by trade for many years. It wasn't until I was about 42, 43 that I got into adventure riding. 2017 with the KTM 640 Adventure with the big tank, and following that, then I got into it. And then this thing called YouTube came along. Well, I used to film, so my mother gave me a a video camera when my first was born. And I used to film everything and I keep it on tape. So I was starting to get understanding of filming and recording a story. And then suddenly this thing called YouTube came along and I thought, oh, and then I combined what I knew from that with that. Oh, before that, I used to make DVDs, first off for my friends. But once YouTube kicked off and I got 100 subscribers or something like that, I had a magazine reach out to me and say, oh, you don't tell a bad story. And they actually used to get me to produce DVDs for them that would be stuck on their magazine. Gradually, the thing got bigger. I retired. I used to be a police commander, just retired probably four years ago now. I loved Motorcycle Adventure because it completely got me away from what I did. You know, a lot of police end up a little bit negative about life and about people, and I didn't want to do that. And I felt the best way, well, I just fell into a wonderful sport that took you into this land of people and new people and adventure and positivity and seeing the best in people. And that kind of balanced my life. And in many ways, I think made me resilient. A lot of police in Australia, I don't know if it's the case in England, but a lot of police suffer from anxiety and post-traumatic stress from what they've seen. I personally think it made me resilient to that because I was always on the Saturdays and Sundays, instead of thinking about what we'd just seen, I was out, riding bikes and meeting different people. I didn't really have many police friends. I used to have a lot of motorcycling friends, and that to me was a much more important and enriching environment than policing. I love what I did and I walked away happy and healthy. And, if a sport can do that for you, you're pretty lucky.
Did your time in the police, did it taint your view of humanity? Probably seen the worst of people?
Yeah, I think I definitely have seen the worst. I was in the young part of my career, I was a detective, and then I gradually worked through the ranks. I ended up at the rank of superintendent, which is, our force was about, at that stage, about 18,000. So that's in the top 100. I think the funny thing is, though, what really changed humanity was not what I saw, out in the battlefield, for want of a better word. It was actually my colleagues. The policing in Australia was highly politicised and toxic. That was the bit. It wasn't the tragedy, because, in tragedy, you can always do something good for someone. If it's a mother who's lost a son, you can always strive your best to do what you can. But yeah, the toxicity of, it's never so much backstabbing and that sort of stuff. I didn't like that part of policing. I actually loved the front line, and I loved, working on the street. And I was still arresting people as a superintendent, which I think was a byproduct of adventure riding, because you got to be fit and coordinated. I'm a little bit tubby, but you see cops that are like fat. And I wasn't one of them because I was actually pretty active.
We've done quite a few Europe tours with a friend of ours who served in the police force. I always felt we were with a very capable human being when we were riding with.
It's like going out riding with your dad, wasn't it, really?
Well, not really that.
Not your dad, obviously. My dad.
But he was just great in any situation.
I think when we went from London to Sydney with Darren Higginson, I think the first thing when I got over there, when I wheel standed past him on those 690s we had at about 100 kilometres an hour, he realised I wasn't that responsible. That was the first thing. But
you were making progress. I mean,
we were, and Darren was a soldier, and he had his experience, and I had mine. I don't think on the trip from London to Sydney we made a mistake with navigation. And the other thing is, when the decisions had to be made, we made them jointly and thoughtfully. And yeah, I have seen the shit hit the fan. I'm very good at first aid when the shit really hits the fan and people are in those really dire situations. It's just through exposure and practice. Yeah, policing does bring a series of problem-solving skills that are useful for adventure riding, but there are many people like Nugget, who's a roofer by trade, who runs a roofing business. He equally is a great problem solver. And that's another thing that brings me to adventure riding, is adventure riders are problem solvers. It's different to dirt bike riders because you've got to interact with strangers. So you've got these high EQ, emotional intelligence stuff. Most adventure riders have, some don't. We all know those guys. But you've also got the practical stuff. Having said that, most of my colleagues would say that don't let Dave have a screwdriver or a hammer. But, there's a blend of that. yeah, that's another thing that attracts me to adventure riding.
Let's get back to Australia for a little bit, because looking at your 679 videos that you've got on YouTube, obviously a lot of them are based in Australia. And you just mentioned when you were 14, you rode over 100 miles on a trail and didn't hit a road.
I hit a road, just crossed roads.
So what's it like to ride in Australia? It looks and sounds remarkable.
You know, keep harking back to Darren, because it kind of provides a link to you to what my riding's like. Darren and you couldn't get over it. You know, the amount of dirt we ride. Like, we don't, like, if we say we're riding on the dirt, well, that could be for 4 days. You know, and occasionally we'll get a road, and then we'll ride again. And the riding is variant. You know, you could be in foot deep sand, you could be in a rocky kind of stuff. You could be in steep hill climbs, surprisingly steep hill climbs, steeper than anything, even in New Zealand, which is equivalent to the Himalayas, far steeper than those hill climbs, and steep descents. Got everything. And it's funny with the adventure riding community, it's basically divided into 2 groups in Australia: those that have done a truckload of road and those who were born up in the dirt. And the people who are brought up in the dirt have an access to a much greater range of trails than the people brought up in the road who stay on the open stuff. Another thing for people from England, and I remember giving Darren a kind of a fatherly lecture, those big open roads where you say, beauty, I can open it up. Yeah, so there are dangers. And in the afternoon is particularly dangerous when the kangaroos come out, and emus and goats, and you don't see them, and they pivot. They don't run like a deer. They don't run like anything that you may have seen. And then on top of that, you've got eagles that come down to eat the carrion beside the road from the roos that have already been killed. Yeah, there's things like that really can catch riders out, and frequently catch Australian riders out. I mean, when I first got in the desert, I would just sit on 100. If I could and I had enough fuel, I would sit on 160, 170, hold it just open and just go, you know. But then what you quickly realise after about 40 minutes of that is your petrol's just going like this. And on the big bore bikes, you're actually sucking oil unnecessarily. So there's trips and traps to riding, but I never, ever don't realise how lucky I am to have been born in Australia for adventure riding. It's really good.
Have you ever hit anything?
Yeah, I hit a kangaroo at 110 kilometres an hour when I was about 16 on a bull taco frontiera. That was an interesting experience. It was about 7:30 in the morning. I thought I hit a rock. That's what I thought I hit. And I remember doing a handstand, and I thought, no, I've got this. I've got this. I'm still in my feet. As my feet went over, and I remember looking down and watching the forks going past me and starting to see the front wheel, and I went, no, I haven't got this. It was that slow. And then boom, 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 crashed. And the kangaroo, I stopped. I was skidding along on my back, and I finally stopped, and I came to rest at the base of a tree, like, another 2 meters either way, and I probably would have had a broken neck. But unfortunately, I kind of finally got up and looked around. Here's the poor kangaroo taking its last breath. And I thought, what a terrible waste of a beautiful animal. So I put it between the legs, this kangaroo, and it draped over. And I took it home and I skinned it. And I was going to salt it and make it, at least a rug or something. And the bloody dog ate it. And so my mum came out and said, David, there are pieces of kangaroo all over the backyard. What in the hell have you been doing?
That might be the most Australian story I'll hear this year.
Well, the funny thing is, if you think about a kangaroo, like, it's got this long tail, and I've got this thing on the bull taco frontiera, like draped over like this, and the tail's dragging on the ground. Like, it looked quite spectacular.
Be good to talk a little bit about your YouTube channel. I just had a quick look earlier. You may or may not know this, 162,000 followers on YouTube, 679 videos. So that if you're looking for content, guys, go to Motorcycle Adventure Dirtbike TV, MADTV on YouTube. There's so much great content there. Your most popular video is the one you've been talking about with Darren, 4.4 million views. I think the next one is there's another one with a trip you did to the Himalayas with Nugget. Great Australian nicknames. Clubby, Nugget. Have you got a nickname, Dave?
You guys gave me a nickname, Davo.
Davo?
Davo. There was some ad at the time about Jason gave that to me from Hemel Hempstead KTM. And yeah, he called me Davo out of it. There used to be a Tui's, a beer commercial with a Davo in it.
Oh, there we go.
And I had Davo on my bike for many years. Oh, you forgot one, 40 million views total.
40 million in total. That's incredible.
Well, it isn't. It isn't. I mean, in the YouTube world, I'm in the top 1%, but there are a lot of people much bigger than me in the world of adventure. You've got, over your way, you've got Itchy Boots. You've got a guy here in Australia called Adam Ryman. And then you've got some up-and-coming ones. There's a guy called Big Rock Moto who's just about to overtake me. He just does solely bike reviews. But, I wanted it sustainable. Like, I've been in this for 11 years. So I wanted it sustainable for me. This is for me. It's not, I have turned it into a business since I retired, but I had to because, it was just getting reasonably successful. But yeah, in terms of, around the world, it's kind of mid-sized adventure channel, motorcycle adventure channel. I think the secret to YouTube is not to let it devour you. If anything, as I get older and on probably my last couple of years as I wind down, I'm going to move away from bike tests and just do the movies about the stories, the stories of adventure and going away with people. And it doesn't have to be technical writing, and people seem to like those stories. And I must be a reasonable storyteller because those stories actually generate far more views for me than test reviews. Although I do have a couple of pretty big watched test reviews.
Well, it's funny you should mention Adam and Norley, because I think I mentioned already you've been nominated in our soon-to-be annual awards. So we're doing the TAMP, the Trail Adventure Motorbike Podcast Awards, and you've been nominated for Best Moto Adventure Film.
Oh, wow.
For the Red Rooster series. Now, a lot of people that listen to us have a Honda 300, a CRF 250 or a 300, but you've been nominated with Adam's Warhorse, Greg Villalobos's Tet Spain film, which we're in, Itchy Boots Season 6, and have you come across Ollie Moto?
No.
No, he does this series called Full HD. Him and this Welsh enduro racer converted a Harley Davidson Sportster into an enduro bike. Very, very enjoyable as well. Ollie's films are great, although he's disappeared on a secret mission for the next couple of years, so we won't see him for a while. So, yeah, congratulations on that. We'll be announcing the winners at
thank you.
At a little festival in the Peak District in July. So we'll let you know.
There's very strong competition there, I can tell you. Yeah, Itchy Boots Norley is a good storyteller. I noticed now that she's pulled back while she's in Africa from, and I don't watch her that often, but I was reading about it actually last night, where she's reduced her output from 3 episodes a week to 2. Frankly, I don't know how she did two episodes a week. That is dedication. And what I try to do when we go for a ride is, with the people I film with, it's not, I try to make filming not part of the deal. Like maybe in the Himalayan video and in the more structured one with Darren from London to Sydney, what we do is we'd say, this is filming day. We need, we both were coached first by Austin Vince. So he used to say, get about 12 stories together. If you've got an adventure film for an hour, get about 6 to 12 decent stories, and then work out and shoot the crap out of those and do that well. And then, don't do your whole trip. And so, so I'm pretty efficient at filming. So if you rode with me, you wouldn't be too bothered by filming it. It's here and there. And I think that's the secret to it. In terms of enjoying what I do, like I've been doing this for 11 years and not as big as some of those other channels, but I kind of balance what I want to get out of it.
As a filmmaker, do you feel a bit guilty that you're making a film of a trip, and do you feel like you're sort of putting people out a little bit that you're riding with? I only ask because I think Greg, that we ride with, often feels like that if he's making a film, and I can never quite get over to him that we don't mind at all. To stop and get the drone out, it's great fun.
Some people do. I think what I learned, I actually started the skill set on paid rides where people were a company, like for example, over in New Zealand, there was a company called New Zealand High Country Adventures at the time. I used to go on that trip and I used to film it. That would become the YouTube and promotional stuff. But those people were paying for that. So I quickly learned, like, you don't interfere with the ride. I film quite quickly and bang it out, and I'm more interested in the interaction than the quality of the shoot. Yeah, if there's a choice between a funny moment between you and I talking, or dropping a sausage on the ground and a goanna picking it up, I'll have that first. And if I get it half-assed, then I get it half-assed, but it's real.
It's funny to hear you talk about the numbers. If somebody had told the bloke who just noticed YouTube come along that one day he'd have 40 million views, it would have blown your mind, wouldn't it? Now you have this curse of comparing it to others in a way.
Yeah, it's a very good point you raise. And sometimes I get caught up in it, and I try to measure my success in my activity and how many people are hitting, because you go, oh, people are going off you because the metrics are so accurate. Like, I know, for example, in London that, there are 578 people in London that watch MADTV. I know I can rank the cities, and it's a problem for me because I did statistics for 7 years. So I understand it. So I've got to try to put that away, particularly when I'm coming into the twilight. At 62, I would like to be riding until I'm 80, but anything can happen now, and I recognize that window and I want to milk that. And so I just want to balance that out, and I've just got to recognize that this is going to taper down, but there's nothing to say. If I did one movie a year, say London to Sydney at 4 million views, that'd be all right.
Yeah. I get the impression from my YouTube viewing that you're just on a motorcycle most of the time. That's how it appears.
This is a very good point. Now, since I've had grandchildren, we've had a discussion with my kids.
Oh, there's been a discussion.
There has been a discussion. One of the discussions is, you've had your job. Now's your time to do this. And I, hang on. I'm not quite in the waste paper bin yet. What we've negotiated, if you like, is Tuesdays and Wednesdays are kids, and then the rest of the time is mine. And occasionally I'll, if I go, well, I try not to go away more than a week now, but there are some trips coming up where that's just not going to be possible, some exciting stuff coming up. So, yeah, there is a tension there, get in your place, and one might call that ageist. And it's funny, women talk about their glass ceiling. Well, I can tell you, as a retiree, people are trying to put me in a box as I get older. And, what adventure tells you is there are no boxes. And so I have to just politely push back against the kids. I know what they mean. I have to think about, and selfishly, I have to think about my happiness and what I do. And
you've done well in those negotiations, I would say.
I went hard. Yeah. The other thing about motorcycling, I was reading and this is actually a study, and I wish I could pull it up right now, because it was a study done, like a proper academic study, that showed that motorcycling actually reduces dementia, the incidence of dementia, because when we're riding along, it's a far more active thing than just driving in a car. There's spatial, there's balance, there's a whole range of things. And it actually, there's a significant difference between motorcyclists and others and the general population in terms of our resistance to dementia, which adventure before dementia, I'm all with that.
There we go.
We're stealing that one as well, I think.
That's going on a T-shirt. when you do your travels and your adventures, do you kind of have a methodology or a way of traveling that you rules that you try and stick by, where you interact with locals and that kind of thing, or do you just take it as it comes?
No, there's no rules. There are philosophies more than rules. The people you ride with generally have the same philosophy on life. They don't have the same behaviour as you. They don't, they have a lot of differences. But if there was one thing with the people that I ride with, and you would have seen that with Darren, he has an approach to life that people are good, that treat people with respect. Remember that you're in someone else's country and they may look at the world differently, and respect their point of view. Yeah, stuff like that. Don't be rude. Yeah, it's a number of things like that more than anything in terms of getting the best out of adventure. I mean, I think if there was a word, it's humility. To go into an Aboriginal township in Australia and say, oh God, aren't they living poorly or whatever? When in fact it should be, look how they're living with what they've got. That's not a bad run, So yeah, I think humility's there, and the recognition that we have a lot more resources and money and power in a sense, but you don't have that when you go into someone else's town. You're in their hands. And yeah, humility is the thing, but no rules. I think in terms of the actual physical motorcycle stuff, there's stuff where I go, I wouldn't do that shit. That's kind of slightly different to the actual moving along through the world.
That was a lovely part of the London-Sydney film, wasn't it? When one of the KTMs was playing it, was it a fuel pump or something? And you got knocked out. Yeah, that was exactly what you've just been talking about, happened on in that situation.
Yeah, it's staggering that, and that people will come out of the woodwork and help you. I think the most spectacular one of those happened at a place called Imagee, and we're in the middle of, can we say 4-letter words in this program? No.
You're encouraged.
Yeah, all right. We're in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, and I mean that. And Nugget's got, and if there was an adventure that's worth watching, if I had a recommendation of Australian adventure worth watching that I've got on the channel, it's the Kimberley Motorcycle Adventure, where we truly were exploring across the great north of Australia. Nugget keeps getting flat tyres, and I think he's up to his 6th, and things are looking grim. Like, we don't have any more tyres, and we're running out of tube glue. Like, it's looking really grim. I've gone, I think, 150 Ks to look for tubes for him. So going off and into the farms, just in the middle of nowhere, just hoping someone's got a motorcycle for rounding up cattle or something. No luck. And I get back there, and one of the guys who are riding with just holds up a tube. And he's got a tube. He said, you wouldn't believe how we got this tube. And what had happened was they were beside the road, and this Aboriginal couple stopped in their 4-wheel drive. And I said, what's the problem? Because everyone helps each other out there. What's the problem? Oh, we don't have a tube. Oh, just hang on, boss, hang on. Boom, straight out. And they drive and they say, mate, have a look at this. And they bring back a WR 450F on the bonnet of the car with the wheel on it, and completely stripped. It's got the front wheel, and I think it was 1980s model, something like that. They just put it on the bonnet of the car. They drive up, you can imagine it going down the Duco, throw it off, there you go, take the tube out. The tube, and you think about it, 1980s, that's when ABBA was singing Dancing Queen, for God's sake, right? Pull out the tube, and the tube had one weld spot on it. That's all it had. Yeah, and we fixed it. So, yeah, that's a classic example of, getting help. But, yeah, there's some great ones in that other film as well.
Dave, you do quite a lot of tests of bikes on your channel. So I wanted to know, what's in your garage? What do you choose to ride yourself?
In my garage is my KTM 690 that I rode from London to Sydney. I still ride that. I rode it the other day. It is an amazing bike, and I'm actually going to do a review on that in comparison to all the other bikes I ride, because it's now coming up to 12 years old or 11 years old, 12 years old. It's just a cracker of a bike. I could literally get on that now, turn the key and ride to Alaska, and it's going to work for me. And again, that was a Rally Raid Products bike from John Mitchinson in the UK. Everything still works on it. Yeah, KTM 690s inherently had some problems, but you sort those out. I could list them for you, but once you've got them done, then they're okay. I've got a Yamaha T7 I love the Yamaha T7, a top heavy bike with horrible suspension, but again, I've sorted that out. Well, when I say horrible suspension, for most people, probably the suspension's fine, but I ride reasonably hard and, get a reasonable amount of air off erosion mounds all the time. So suspension's pretty important for me. I've got a Husky 701 2021 model. My most recent possession is a Husky 501 that I've converted to a rally. And I've built 7 bikes over the years, a couple of those for John Mitchinson, and I've done testing for him on suspension and that. But yeah, the 501 would be my favourite build. And I don't think it's because I'm in a honeymoon period. I just think it's an absolute weapon. It's just so good.
That's the EXC KTM equivalent, isn't it? It's the enduro bike, basically.
Yeah, it's a Husky 501 that I've adventurised with the help of some really knowledgeable people. And again, I've been blessed, with YouTube have introduced me to some really knowledgeable people such as John Mitchinson, but there's a whole lot of them right around the world. Rod Faggoter is an Australian Dakar racer, just a whole range of people. So my access to knowledge as to how to set up is just beyond anything I could have imagined.
What did you think of the CRF? That you rally rated that as well, and how would you rate that as a bike?
Clubby and I fought over it. We actually bought that. So that's what we think of the CRF. We think it's a cracking bike. That suspension on it, I gave that an absolute hammering, and John Mitchinson's done a brilliant job on that suspension. Yeah, fantastic bike. Around the world that tomorrow, comfortable. Clubby loves it. We got down to nearly tossing a coin. In the background, I said, because Nugget's got this 500, KTM 500. And so the tipping point with me was, well, if Clubby buys me out half, then that money will go into the 500. And I've got to have a 500 before, I hit 65. I don't think you can have a 500 at 70. I don't think so I had to get it.
What's been your favourite trip that you've done? Where's your, I know you've been to Tibet a couple of times, for example. Where have you enjoyed riding the most?
Without doubt, I love India the best. Not in the lowlands, but in the Himalayas. The people aren't as rushed. The risk of getting injured by wayward traffic, everyone's more respectful in the Himalayas, because if you make a mistake, everyone dies. So no one wants to run over anyone, and everyone's courteous. The food's great. I love the Indian culture. It's so different to Australian culture. Access, but what I'd say to everyone, though, is if you want to get to India, for God's sake, I'm telling you now, do it in the next 5 years, because China, with their Belts and Roads project, are just carving through the Himalayas with these 4-lane multi-highways. And a lot of the tracks and a lot of the stuff that really make you feel like you're, adventurous will be gone.
This is terrible, isn't it? I heard this about, where our friend Neil Gonzalez travelled through Africa maybe nearly 10 years ago. But he said the same then about Africa, that it was just becoming lovely black, smooth tarmac.
It's terrible. And I think there's a window of adventure. I hate to say it. Really believe that I was in the halcyon period of being able to have the mobility and the resources to go. I mean, I'll never forget being in Kyrgyzstan with Darren, and no, it wasn't Kyrgyzstan. It was the back of China. Right at the back of China, the far western part of China, near a place called Kashgar. And we're driving along a dirt road, and then it just turned into a 4-lane freeway. There was no one on it, but it was a 4-lane freeway. And we drove down that 20 or 30 kilometres. It was just a piece of 4-lane freeway for the future. It's horrible.
Motorcycles. I was explaining to a friend of mine over the weekend who I was trying to convince to get a motorcycle. And I was just saying that motorcycles, for me, offer up so many opportunities. I mean, for you in your retirement, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Can't imagine what would have happened without them. It's just transformed your life, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, it's always been a big part of my life. And it's just been very enriching, and I appreciate that.
What bikes were you riding in that period then? You said you sort of came to it fairly late on, really, didn't you, to adventure bike riding? Were you riding road bikes?
No road bikes in my career at all. I look at them with disdain, which is, I shouldn't, but I do. I think, look at what you're missing out on. In Australia, you're basically missing out on about 90% of what you can do. But yeah, so KTM 640, and then straight to the KTM. I kept that. I love that. I kept that for 7 or 8 years and rode its legs off, and then into the KTM 690 with Darren. So I bought the one that we rode from London to Sydney, kept that for years. Yeah, it's only recently that I've bought a couple of bikes. I'm overbiked at the moment, but I'm not complaining. A bit of wincing in the family, not by I've got to say, Sonia, my wife, is amazingly supportive of what I do, does not blink an eye, does not say a thing.
Have you got space for these bikes? That's the danger,
No.
isn't it? You haven't?
No. No, if you look at when we do reviews, you can't even swing a cat in there. Like, I have no space. I've got a shed. My shed is 1.8 metres wide and 3 metres long. That's my shed. I have no space for these bikes. Every time I get to go on a bike, I have to pull one out, put one in. It drives me nuts.
I've somehow cultivated a culture. Maybe this is something you should aspire to, where now my long-suffering girlfriend has seen so many bikes come and go that now, if I kind of bring a bike in here and I don't really tell her about it, she won't notice it for 6 months.
No.
And it might be, and she walks past it every day to get to the washing machine or something. Yeah, she just doesn't notice it anymore. It's wonderful.
She does listen to this, though.
Yeah, but you'll edit this out. I know. I trust you as a friend. Just take that out.
Not editing that bit out. And even if I do, I'll clip it and send it to her.
And the irony is I'm sponsored by a Pirelli, a tyre company, and I don't wear out the tyres on the bikes because I'm riding everyone else's bikes. And everyone thinks that's glamorous. When you're on a Ducati Multistrada, jumping a Ducati Multistrada just on and on endlessly on a 30-kilometre track just to test it out, if I bin that, I pay for that. All right. I don't think people realise that.
No, I didn't realise that.
I was only saying this to someone the other day, it seems a marvellous lifestyle, but actually there's a risk to it. And the other thing is riding big bikes hard, invariably you're going to stuff up. And if you're power sliding, you've only got to hit a rock in the wrong way or jumping and something doesn't go quite well for you, and you can bin those things. And when you bin a big twin, you throw it. You don't hang on to it. There's no point. But there is a huge advantage. And the reason we test so much bikes, I don't know, it's actually COVID, because we couldn't move around. So we started testing bikes. And then if you notice, we always get 2 bikes now. So I went to the manufacturers and I said, there's no point in just giving me one bike because I don't get vision of the bike because I'm testing it. And all the manufacturers have come on board and they get it. And we generally have 2 bikes when we're filming. But one of the things of testing bikes, I think one of the things I have right now is a contemporary knowledge of a range of bikes in my head. It's like a teledex. So I can sit on a bike, probably move it from side to side, turn the handlebar, and I can tell a lot about that bike straight away. And the other thing I have, I think it's almost telepathic, is an understanding of traction control and the different levels of traction control and ABS and lean sensitive traction control. And it's simply because of exposure. And you get on a bike and you go, oh, they've improved that. And what you notice now is this separation. There's some really high quality Bosch systems out there for traction control, that sort of stuff. And then there's the other companies that are just being left behind at the moment. But yeah, that's one of the advantages of riding lots of bikes.
Is it unusual for you to fall?
Yes, I try not to. And I think as I'm getting older, I shave off a bit more speed. I'd say I'm a much slower rider now than I was. Unlikely to take risks. I will pick a place where I'm going to absolutely floor it and I will look at that. I can't afford, God bless it doesn't happen, touch wood, and I'm not suspicious. You don't want to fall badly and hurt yourself. I don't want that. I want to continue riding, and I've had some decent get-offs in my life, and yeah, I don't want to do that.
Can we?
How old are your grand?
Oi, give me a go. You can ask how old his grandchildren were.
It was, yeah.
Not a motorcycle-related question. Can we talk a bit about your riding buddies? I'm thinking a Clubby and Nugget now, and not only have they got great nicknames, but they also are fantastic characters as well. They do seem very, very Aussie to this Englishman. Tell us a little bit about those guys and how long you've been riding with them and stuff like that.
It's quite funny. They would say they don't have similarities, but they do. Let's just go through their similarities because that's the boring bit. They're both leaders in their field. They're both good businessmen, exceptional businessmen. They're smart. They've got high emotional intelligence. They're just, they're on it. So that's the first bit. Clubby in Australia is basically almost a legend in terms of the motorcycle industry. There's not anyone he doesn't know, and he knows the history, and he knows who's behind what and who's zooming who. So he has this history that I never had. You know, I came up through the YouTube world, and I've suddenly, you know, just because we live near each other and I did some work for him, we just developed a friendship. Yeah, so he's amazingly knowledgeable. In terms of his riding style, he is quite conservative. He can clip along on single trail very quickly, but he's consistent. He's consistent and a safe rider, and a lot of fun to go away with. He cannot hide, and this is what I love about him, he cannot hide his enthusiasm for motorcycling. Doesn't matter whether he's on a 310 or a Norden 901, we're in our element. And when we're out there doing it, it's work, but it's the funnest work you could imagine. So that's kind of Clubby in a nutshell. Nugget, on the other hand, I first met, we're in this thing called a last man standing. It's a dirt ride, extreme dirt ride. And what you did, you post $25 in $5 notes on the front of your bike. And it's a ride over a day, and it's an extreme ride. And every time, if you need a hand or your handlebars hit the ground, you've got to give $5 to this charity, right? So anyway, what happened, and I mean really extreme, and I was dehydrating, and I came around this corner and my leg just gave way, and the pain was excruciating, and I thought I broke my leg. That's what it felt like. I broke my femur. But when I looked down, my muscle had torn through exhaustion, just tore. And there was a gap about this, like a couple of inches across my muscle, and I was excruciating. I'm lying on the ground, and he comes up and he says, well, that's no place to fall off. We didn't understand that the thing had just torn. And then he went straight to the bike and took $5 out. So I could not get up. And then when he realised I couldn't get up, he said, oh, he'll be all right in a minute. Well, I never was. And someone had to carry me. I rode one-legged. I couldn't get my bike on the car, and I was off, with that torn muscle for months. So that was my first. And then about 3 weeks later, he realised I was a police commander, and all his mates have said, who was in his local area, right? He says, they've said to him, do you realise what you've done? Like, Jesus Christ, you're really pushing a French. So then he comes over and he goes, you all right? I said, you've never cared about anything in your fucking life. Why don't you start caring now? He's a loose rider. He engages people very quickly, as does Clubby. They get the best out of people. He's a born leader, and the same as Clubby, and the loosest rider you can imagine.
What do you mean by loose rider?
Well, if you were to watch, say, the Victorian High Country thing, if I'm behind him, people regard me as a traditional enduro rider. The way I stand, everything is out of the 80s, right, with ABBA. And Nugget, because of his short stature, he's bouncing around and bouncing off dirt, and he looks like he's out of control, but he's actually on it. But he's just constantly sliding one way or the other or bouncing off something, and it just doesn't look right. That's what we call loose. Right. Yeah, two great characters, and they really add to the motorcycle adventure. But there's a whole stable of other people that also come on, occasionally, and they too, some of them have gone out. I mean, Philippe was still a great friend, but he's just gone away from motorcycling. He's into hydrogen and e-bikes, and he feels a bit guilty riding motorbikes, which is I should be feeling, but I'm not quite yet. Not quite there.
You've shot quite a few videos with the now very famous Chris Birch, but you were making videos with him many years ago, weren't you?
Yeah, Chris Birch just reached out to me one day. I got a phone call. He said, do you want to catch up? I'm keen on doing some filming. I went, yeah, I'll give it a run. I don't know how it'll go. Our first video, I think, had 900,000 views, now close to 1 million views. I just filmed that on a little camera, a tiny little camera with crappy slow motion. As you know, he was probably in his peak at that stage. Was an amazing rider. That actually got back to the KTM factory. They saw him sliding the bike around. And then we did a series of them. Yeah, Red Bull gave us a 4-wheel drive, and we went out into the boondocks of New Zealand in the South Island, and yeah, we did that and did a few other things, and then just kind of grew apart.
Because Chris has also been nominated for an award, Best Training or Riding Centre, and it's just for his last video series that I think you have to pay to get access to.
Now, that's another thing that came my way that I didn't expect, and that is that I used to go to those training sessions, and just by osmosis, while you're filming it, and then you're publishing, videos for tutorials, which Chris was talking about at the time, but we never got into it. I'll be frank, I didn't want to get into it. Yeah, you just by osmosis and watching him ride and riding with him and filming him, either from behind or in front, picked up a lot of skills from him.
Do you think about technique much as you're riding, or do you just do what feels right in a way?
Well, it's funny. Chris used to always talk about getting your rear end out. Like if you're going around a right-hand corner, your bum needs to be out to the left. And I used to do that religiously, but actually for me, it's better for me to put all my weight, be lifting with my right hand and pushing down on that left. I used to ride like Chris a bit more with my bum out, but it wasn't sustainable for me. And I think that's one of the frustrations for Chris is that he, teaches a lot of older blokes and teach not the word because people just leave that thing, keep with it for a week and then
go back
to what they did. And I've slowly gone back. Yeah, what Chris, if he had his way, he really enjoys teaching kids because he can. One thing he said to me, it was hilarious. He took these kids up this enormous hill, 10 to 12. And he said, well, you're going to ride down there. I said, we can't ride down there. And he just got a motorbike and just pushed the motorbike off. And the motorbike just rolled down, then fell over. He says, all you have to do is sit on the motorbike and you'll get down that hill. That's all you have to do. Don't worry about it. Mind over matter. Just do the job. He'd be an inspirational kid teacher. But I think old people, we're just set in our ways,
So how old are your grandkids?
2 and a bit, and one is just under 2.
I wondered whether they knew what an absolute motorcycle legend you were yet, but it probably won't have dawned on them, and it probably won't dawn on them for a while yet.
Interesting. My grandson picks up the magazines and goes, pop, pop, pop. Now, an interesting thing with grandkids, and yeah, I'm not interested in them starting on motorbikes. Yeah, I would prefer them, my son is at me because I can get sponsorship pretty easily for things, and collaborations with motorcycle companies. So it'd be relatively easy for me to acquire some, a KTM little tiny battery operated bike sort of thing. And I'm not interested in doing that. I want kids to learn the basics from mountain bike. We've got incredible mountain bike riding here. Although I'm in the middle of the city, there are kangaroo. Like I am within 10 kilometres of the city centre. I can see a kangaroo every now and again when I'm walking along, or an echidna, little spine, or a lyrebird. I don't know if you know what a lyrebird is, but these are things that are in the freaking wilderness. And the way the city is designed where I am, it's just bush. I can walk from out of my house now and walk 20 kilometres in the bush. And I'll see a house occasionally. But yeah, so we have a great mountain biking community here and lots of mountain biking. So getting out there is amazing. Bikes to me are the priority for them.
I've seen so many parents try and encourage their kids to ride motorbikes, and it always seems to have the opposite effect. And when I think back to sort of what appealed to me about bikes, it was seeing other people riding bikes and thinking, that looks amazing. It was never, I didn't need any encouragement. You either, it's something you really want to do, but I don't think it can be forced upon you.
I can tell you with all my senses, the day I first rode a motorbike, it was a Honda QE50 2-speed. It was at a show and they had this track and it was just literally as big as this room here, and you just went round a tyre. And I said, Dad. And, he paid the $2 or whatever. And I just went, oh my God. It was like, that was it. I'd been shot up the arse with a rainbow and that was it. That was my life. Bam, just put out before me. And from that, and that was at Morisset. And then so we got the XL100. And then, bam, another one. Like I kept exploring, like that was it.
Nearly everybody we've had on the podcast has a story like that, or everybody that we talk to, friendship group, has got a story about that first ride on a motorbike, and that was it. That's the rest of my life sorted out. But it's also interesting talking about I've got 3 boys, 14, 20, and 22, and I've not really encouraged any of them to get motorbikes. So I'm kind of hoping once they hit kind of 25, they all talk about wanting to do it. once they get to 25 and their brains are fully developed, not to be idiots, then I will help them acquire motorcycles, but not until then.
I was just about to say that you took the thoughts out of my mind. My son used to ride with me I bought him a KTM 200 when he was 12. He used to get the speed wobbles on it. But he had that from when he was 12 right up until he was 20. And then I just laid off motorbikes. What I didn't want him to do was go on the road, and I just laid off. And like you, brains aren't matured. Young men make decisions and take risks. And that's why we send them to war. They're great guinea pigs for war. I was happy that he didn't pick that up and he picked up surfing. But I try now to get him on a bike, and he says to me, "Dad, I don't have the seat time, and I've got a young daughter." And I thought, God, I've over tweaked that needle too much.
I just wanted to ask, I kept thinking about it and then I kept forgetting to ask the question. What do you film on predominantly?
It's interesting. I film on what's called a PXW Z90 Sony, which I stick in a tank bag, but basically it's a little handheld camera, and then a GoPro 360, and most recently a drone. And the drone has been really useful, if you see my recent stuff, to really highlight what Australia's about. I don't know if you're noticing that, but I'm looking at some of those shots and I'm really encouraged. It provides a different perspective of what motorcycling in Australia is about, and the vastness of it. And I hope that's coming through. I don't think I'm going to change my kit very much. Like the GoPros get better, the 360s get better. Every now and again, someone asks me to do a tutorial on how I film. I've resisted it, but I might do a live on that, and then people can just shoot me questions. So yeah, that might be a good idea. While we're on camera shooting, I've just initiated a thing for those who want to join MADTV, and I've asked them to submit, and I've given them a link, their funniest or most memorable video bit of action, 60 seconds, and people are uploading it now, and I'm going to make a video compile, and Clubby and Nugget and I are going to do the narrative behind it and give some acclamation where it's due and derision where it's due. So that's a neat little project we just kicked off a couple of days ago. The video already, there's a guy from Albania, he was on a KLX 300 and he's riding up this hill, he's trying to get off the beach and he's smothered in camping gear and he's just rolled back, no. And we've all been there. And it's wonderful to see the generosity of people sharing, their most awkward moments. So I'm quite excited about it. I've got 3 videos at the moment, but if I get a few more, I'll be laughing.
Do you enjoy the edit, and do you do all the editing yourself?
Well, it's funny, with editing, with the last one we did, Victorian High Country Motorcycle Adventure, and I'm filming, I got back and I knocked that over in three days really quickly. I know where the stories are, and I go bang, bang, bang. And I think that's had already 40,000 views. And that's what I say to my wife, like, that's the bread and butter. That's what people like. They want the interaction between Nugget and I and whoever we take with us. And if you notice, there's 2 YouTube stalkers on that. So we bring YouTube people into it, who've watched our stuff, and that's a lot of fun. But the tests are work. They're work. And when you're riding the bike, you've got to be considering it. And you have a responsibility, I think, to provide a balanced view on bikes. And sometimes, people say, oh, you're too kind to bikes. I think what I am, I'm too enthusiastic about motorcycles rather than kind. But you will know from a review whether I'm not happy with something or not.
A lot of YouTube people test bikes and you think you've only ridden about 4 bikes in your life, but you've had countless bikes and you can actually make an informed choice and give decent feedback because you know what good suspensions, you know what bad suspension is. You talked about ABS earlier, and so I do enjoy and value your reviews quite a bit.
It's interesting. I know for a fact that manufacturers actually watch what we do. And a classic is on the Husky 701. I had a screw. I said, isn't it a pity it doesn't have a little bikini fairing just to keep the wind off you? And I pulled out, of all things, Darren's old bikini fairing from his 690 that I kept, and he let me keep. And I said, that's what we need on the Husky. And then they released that in about 6 months as a part, not as the KTM hard part, but a slightly different one. But Yeah, they do listen. Honda listened to the stuff we did. I know that went all the way back to Japan on the Honda CRF. I know that for a fact. So they do listen. I had an executive pull me aside. He felt I was very harsh. I'd had a few beers and Nugget was there and he still talks about this story. I said, for fuck's sake, why did you put such a shit rear shock on a brilliant bike? Why? What knucklehead in what room gave you the idea that that would be a good idea? And, and I went, oh, well, that's a lot. Nugget says, well, that's the last time you're going to work with Husky on it. And in fairness, the guy knew my frustration because I really, I've got a couple of Huskies. I respect the brand. And some of these knuckleheads in these team meetings, where the accountant's sitting there, well, we've got to cut money on something. Make the seat thinner, for God's sake. But when you've got a handling bike like a 901, you put that in it. So I said, please, don't leave this thinking I'm being disrespectful. I'm just enthusiastic and I don't understand. And lo and behold, what comes out this year? And I wasn't the only one, incidentally. I think lots of people were talking about that.
Finally, we'll be coming out to visit Adam at some point, so we'll hopefully join you on a ride as well.
I think that'd be a good idea. I think it'd be great. Yeah, keen to facilitate that.
And if you think you've seen Steady, wait for me and Noel to arrive.
The only other thing I'd just flag with you, I've got I'd have to kill you if I told you, but I've got a cracking project with a motorcycle company coming up soon. Stay tuned. It's in the next couple of months. It's an absolute cracker and I'm really busting a gut. And in many ways, swan song's not the right word, but I think this year is my peak in terms of that interaction with motorcycle companies and that. And then I think I'll just peter off and just keep doing the movies. It's a cracker. I'm really excited about it.
Oh, it's been such a delight talking to you.
It really has.
I really enjoyed that.
I'm really sorry we got you out of bed so early.
Have you had your breakfast?
No, it's 6:46. I'm going to go back, crawl into bed.
Are you back to bed? This is a first.
Yeah, no, I can't get up at 5 o'clock. That's fucking ridiculous. Bloody Clubby, he always wants that frigging sunset. So the other day, sunrise. The other day, and I can't complain. I'm not allowed to complain because he gets up me. So we get up at 4:30 the other morning and it's pissing down rain. Bucketing down rain. And that enthusiasm he's got, he's like this, right, we're going to get the shot. And I'm looking out and I'm thinking, what? So we jump in a van. We got this new bike, can't remember what it was. And we go out onto this headland. The rain is parallel, just the raindrops are as big as golf balls, right? He goes, no, we're going to get a sunrise. We're going to get a sunrise. And I thought, no, I'm not going to put a damper on this. I'm just going to let it go. And he says, and in the end, we're there for half an hour and it never stopped. I said, what'd you say? I can't hear you with the rain going on. And he goes, no. Half an hour later, he turns to me and I realised, I'm not going to get that sunrise, am I? No, mate, I don't think so. No. It's great to be around these people, but fuck me dead sometimes. And Nugget's as crazy as that. He'll have his heart set on something and you'll go, why the fuck are we doing this?
Thank you so much, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Above and beyond.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Remember to send me the link to it and I'll send it to Nugget and Clubby.
Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.